The rain came down in relentless sheets, blurring the streets of Brookville and swallowing the faint hum of the city into a heavy silence. The wipers of an old, dented pickup truck squeaked back and forth, barely keeping up with the storm. Inside sat Ethan Cole, a man who looked far older than his 35 years. His hands were rough, his clothes damp and worn, and his eyes, once bright with hope, now carried the exhaustion of a man who'd been fighting too long just to survive. Beside him, in the back seat wrapped in a threadbare blanket, slept his 8-year-old daughter, Mia. Her head rested against a small backpack, their emergency bag, as Ethan called it, stuffed with a few clothes, an old photo album, and Mia's favorite book. The truck sputtered at every red light, and Ethan whispered a silent prayer that it would make it through the night. The storm had worsened when he spotted something ahead. A car pulled over at the side of the road, hazard lights blinking weakly through the rain. The silhouette of a woman stood outside, clearly struggling with something under the hood. Ethan glanced at Mia, sleeping peacefully, then back at the stranded figure. He sighed deeply, his breath fogging the cracked windshield. He didn't have time for this. He had a job interview in the morning, the first in weeks, and he couldn't afford to be late. But something inside him, the same quiet decency that had kept him going even when life had broken him down, refused to drive past. He turned the wheel and pulled over. Sparkles, before we dive deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing good even when no one's watching, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindly Tube. Your support helps us spread more stories that touch the heart and inspire hope. The woman stood drenched, her dark hair plastered to her face, clutching her coat tightly as the rain soaked through. Ethan stepped out and called over the noise of the storm, "You all right, ma'am? Need a hand?" She looked startled at first, then relieved. "My car just died. I think the engine flooded. I tried calling a tow truck, but no one's answering. My phone's nearly dead too." Ethan nodded and opened the hood. Within seconds, he could tell the engine wasn't going anywhere tonight. "You're not getting this thing started in this weather. There's a diner a mile up the road. I can drop you there to wait it out." The woman hesitated, studying him carefully. He was soaked, his clothes threadbare, his hands calloused. Yet his tone was gentle, and the worry lines on his face spoke more of struggle than threat. After a brief pause, she agreed. "Thank you. I'd appreciate that." Inside the truck, Mia stirred awake as the woman climbed in. "Hi there," she said softly, smiling despite her exhaustion. "I'm Mia," the little girl replied sleepily. "Daddy always helps people." The woman's smile faded slightly as she looked at Ethan, who started the truck again, eyes fixed on the road. The heater coughed weakly, filling the cab with the smell of old dust and faint gasoline. At the diner, Ethan insisted on paying for the woman's coffee, despite her protests. He even got Mia a small bowl of soup and half a sandwich. "You didn't have to," the woman said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. "World's hard enough already. Might as well make it easier where we can." As they sat there in the corner booth, the woman studied the man who had stopped for her in the rain. His nails were cracked, his knuckles raw. The faint oil stains on his sleeves told her he'd worked with his hands all his life. Yet when he looked at his daughter, his expression softened in a way that made her heart ache. She finally asked, "You mentioned a job interview tomorrow?" "Yeah," Ethan said with a tired laugh. "Construction company out on the west side. Been looking for steady work since they laid me off. It's been tough. But I gotta keep trying. Mia deserves better than this." He didn't realize the woman had gone quiet, her eyes shimmering with something between guilt and compassion. The next morning, Ethan's alarm didn't ring, the old phone had died overnight. By the time he woke, the sunlight was already pouring through the small window of their tiny rented room. Panic surged through him. He rushed to dress, kissed Mia on the forehead, and sprinted out, but when he reached the construction site, the manager shook his head. "Sorry, we already filled the position. You should have been here an hour ago." Ethan tried to explain the rain, the broken alarm, his truck nearly out of gas, but it didn't matter. He walked back to his truck, feeling the crushing weight of yet another missed chance. That afternoon, as he checked the mail, a letter from the county courthouse waited for him. His heart sank. It was a notice his landlord had filed for eviction. He had 30 days to leave. Over the next weeks, Ethan worked odd jobs, fixing fences, unloading trucks, anything to keep food on the table. But the bills piled up faster than he could pay them. Mia tried to stay cheerful, drawing pictures of the house we'll have someday. Ethan would smile and hang them on the wall, even as the edges curled from the damp air of their rundown apartment. One evening, after picking Mia up from school, he saw two police officers standing by their door. "Mr. Cole," one said, "you'll need to come with us. There's been a complaint filed against you, an old debt and a misunderstanding about missing equipment from your previous job. You'll need to appear before the court next week." Ethan was stunned. He'd never stolen anything in his life. He tried to explain, but the officers only handed him the papers. As they drove away, Mia's small hand clutched his. "It's okay, Daddy. You always say good people get good things one day." He nodded, forcing a smile, though tears stung his eyes. A week later, Ethan stood in a courtroom, dressed in the only decent shirt he owned. He felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. He couldn't afford a lawyer, so he represented himself. All he could do was tell the truth, that the missing tools had been taken after he'd been laid off, not by him. When the judge finally entered, Ethan froze. It was her, the woman from the rain. Her nameplate read, Honorable Judge Helena Graves. For a moment, their eyes met, and she seemed just as surprised. But then, her professional calm returned, and she proceeded with the case. Throughout the hearing, Ethan's voice trembled, but his words were honest. "Your Honor, I've made mistakes, but I've never taken anything that wasn't mine. I just want to provide for my daughter. I'd never risk losing her trust." When it was time for Helena to deliver her verdict, the courtroom was silent. She looked down at the file, then back at Ethan, the same man who had given up his last few dollars to buy her coffee in a storm. Her voice softened. "Mr. Cole, based on the evidence and testimony, this court finds you not guilty of theft. The charges are dismissed." A stunned silence filled the room before Ethan's knees nearly gave out in relief. Helena continued, "However, I'd like to speak with you privately after this session." Later, in her chambers, Helena closed the door gently. "Ethan, I don't know if you remember me." "The night of the storm I remember," he said quietly. "You were stranded." She nodded. "You helped me when you didn't have to. I never forgot that." Her tone softened further. "I looked into your situation. You've been through so much, and yet you still choose kindness. That's rare." Ethan looked down, embarrassed. "It's just how my mom raised me, ma'am. Help when you can, even if no one's watching." Helena smiled faintly. "Well, someone was watching." A week later, Ethan received a call from the city's public works department. They were hiring, and his name had been personally recommended. The reference letter was signed by Judge Helena Graves. The job changed everything. Within months, Ethan and Mia moved into a small but cozy home with a little garden patch out front. Mia got her own room for the first time, and every morning before work, Ethan watered the plants, breathing in the smell of hope returning. Sometimes, he'd look at the framed photo on the shelf, Mia grinning in front of their house, and think of that stormy night, how one act of kindness had turned into a miracle he never saw coming. One afternoon, he received a letter in the mail, a simple handwritten note. "Ethan, sometimes the people we help in the rain end up being the light we need later. Thank you for reminding me what justice truly means.